Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live. A group of children's rights NGOs, including Smart Start, the Equality Collective and D.G. Murray Trust, have called on the GNU to place children at the center of discussions to agree on a new social compact. Now, according to new research that gains made since 1994 are being reversed with the increase in child poverty and mortality. Now, with just 6 years left before the target set by the 2030 National Development Plan expires, the collective say that we are running out of time to increase investment in our country's children. For more on this, I am joined by CEO of the D.G. Murray Trust, David Harrison. Good evening, David, and thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure.
Now, it's been almost a month since the Government of National Unity was actually formed. What can you tell us about the proposed national dialogue that must follow, and what does it mean that a new social compact must be formed?
Well, we don't know exactly when that national dialogue is scheduled for. Certainly, the President announced in his opening of Parliament speech again that it would be happening. Our concern is that the way in which the government at the moment is looking at national priorities, in a way deprioritizes the development of children. It's hidden in there. They speak about children, but it's really framed more in terms of economic terms. And we've got to find a way to foreground children. We've got to say that if this national dialogue is to lead to a national compact, in other words, where government, civil society, labor, private sector get together, it's absolutely critical that children be foregrounded. And if I can just give you one reason why. I mean, as you said, our children progress seems to be starting to reverse. We have made a lot of progress over the past 20 years. Certainly, in terms of child mortality, we've had improvements. We have seen improvements in the number of children who are going to early learning programs. The child support grant has done fantastically to support our children. But it does look like things are starting to go backwards a little bit. Now, if we're going to change our country, every single one of those 3,000 children born today and tomorrow and the next day need to grow up thriving, not in environments where they are malnourished, not in environments when they can't get access to early learning or where they're put at risk. So that's the opportunity, and it requires an all of society response.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it is absolutely instrumental and absolutely necessary to be prioritizing the children of South Africa and ensuring that they have the best possible tools and resources available to them to be able to, yes, be cared for in the way that they deserve, but also to ensure that they are able to, create the future that they want for themselves. Now, with regards to, the statement that you, as well as 3 other children's NGOs have released, what is the call in terms of putting the development of children as the key priority in the next 6 years?
Well, our call really is to say we need to look very clearly and prioritize what is it that's going to make children thrive. And at the very root of that is the need for children to have sufficient food. We can talk about everything else, but if our children don't have enough food, they're going to grow up stunted. They're going to grow up without enough food, and they're not going to be able to participate in the economy. So again, there's this funny divide where people speak about economic participation, they speak about economic growth, but they don't realize that you've got to look backwards and understand what is stunting that growth at source, and that is the lack of food security. So for us, food security is prime. Secondly is to ensure that all children have access to early learning opportunities outside of the home. We know this is critical. We know that it's very vital to work with moms, work with dads and other caregivers as soon as the baby is born and in the first few years of life to develop to develop their language, to stimulate them, to play with those children, to stimulate their brains. But then they need to go into early learning programs where there can be greater exposure, greater participation and socialization with other children. So that's another critical piece. And then a third that is so important now is that we strengthen our child care and protection. We have crazy situations where so many children are in environments where they are at high risk, where their vulnerability happens in the home. And we've got to understand what's driving that. And for us, for example, a major driver of child insecurity, of child trauma, is in fact heavy alcohol drinking in South Africa, a massive problem. And so as a society, we can't again separate out issues of alcohol from our children's development. So we want that foregrounded. We want to say, let's look honestly at what's driving child insecurity, what's driving high rates of gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, and alcohol tops that list. And we have to do something about that.
Now, I really commend the efforts of you and your team, as well as the other organizations that are bringing these issues to the forefront, because I myself have had, many an opportunity to have a look at some of the conditions in which children in South Africa are living under. And some of them are going to school, and the one meal that they get at school is all that they have for the entire day. And it's absolutely absurd to, imagine a reality where children in South Africa, this is the conditions that they're living under. They don't have equal access to education as some of the other children in South Africa, and like you said, are sometimes in danger just being in their own homes. And I really commend the effort of your team to be able to bring these issues to the forefront, and we do hope that the Government of National Unity will absolutely give these issues, the attention that they deserve. Now, the National Development Plan for 2030 is 6 years away. What are some of the targets we were supposed to have achieved as a country by then?
Well, by 2030, we were meant to have eliminated income poverty. We were meant to have got rid of poverty. We were meant to have significantly reduced inequality in the country. We were meant to have ensured that every single child has got access to sufficient food and nutrition, that every child has got at least 2 years of pre-primary education and can read and write by the time they're in grade 3. These are some of the child-specific indicators that again are not divorced from the economic outcomes that were meant to be attained. We were meant to have seen an increase in employment from 13 million in 2011 to 24 million in 2030. Now we're at about 16 million, so we've still got a long, long way to go. And we know again that one of the reasons why people can't get jobs is because they've dropped out of school. And the reason they've dropped out of school comes back to the issues we're talking about, comes back to the fact that they didn't have enough food, that they weren't able to fully participate in early learning opportunities. So it's sort of really working backwards from these economic outcomes to understand their logic and to say, look, we have not got anywhere near meeting our National Development Plan goals. So we have to look at this differently. We can't simply spew the same old message that this is about economic growth and development without getting to the fundamental drivers that are holding us back.
Absolutely. I mean, what you've described just now is that vicious cycle of poverty. And we are continually putting generation after generation, staying stuck in that vicious cycle without equal access to resources such as food, water, shelter, and safety, and without equal access to education. We are not putting our children in the best possible positions to be able to escape that, vicious cycle of poverty. And like you said, become part of the economy. And it all links back, as you said, everything is interconnected. It also relates back to the high rates of youth unemployment we have, or the high rates of unemployment we have as a country. And I agree so much with you in the sense that it all starts with the children. It all starts with, resolving those issues from a very early stage in their lives and giving them the best possible opportunity to break free from that cycle. Now, earlier in our conversation, we talked about, very briefly talked about that South Africa has made gains since 1994 that are now starting to become undone. And in your opinion, what is the reason for this huge reversal in, any of the progress or progression that we have made regarding children in South Africa?
Well, I think we're starting to see early signs. We can't actually say for certain that, in fact, things are starting to reverse, but we are worried. We've seen child poverty rates start to creep up again. Since COVID, child poverty rates have gone up from 34% of children below the food poverty line. In other words, they don't have even enough basic food, money for food, to 38%. So there's been an increase in child poverty. We've seen over the last 5 years or so that the declines in child mortality, the deaths of children under the age of 5, has flattened and in fact seems to be starting to increase again now. Our stunting rates, which is a measure of chronic malnutrition of children, have remained static for the last 20 years. And the last survey that was published late last year actually showed that it seemed to be a slight increase again in stunting. So we're worried about that, and we see these as lead indicators that could imply that there's even more stuff going on behind the scenes. And so for us, now's the time to acknowledge and confront those, say we may well be at an inflection point, and we have to now accelerate gains. We have to be clear on what is going to give us exponential gains for children going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, the statistics that you shared with us now are completely alarming. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I guarantee that a lot of South Africans don't actually know the detrimental effects that, childhood poverty is having on children in South Africa and how alarming the statistics are. And I don't think a lot of South Africans realize how much hunger and food insecurity is an issue in South Africa in 2024. I mean, so many years, after our democracy, we should be seeing, like you said, we should be seeing great improvement in terms of, the lives of our children in South Africa and the people in general. But we're absolutely not seeing that. What do you think that the government of national unity should be doing better? What kind of strategies should they be implementing, or what kind of policies should they be looking at putting into place in order to make sure that over the next 6 years, we are absolutely doing everything we possibly can to reach those national development goals?
Well, again, I would come back to food security first, and we can even define our food problem even more precisely than just the general food security. We have a protein security problem. We have children who are getting enough energy from starches and sugars, but their parents simply can't afford high protein foods, and the result of that is that the children's physical growth is stunted, and that means that we know that their brains are consequently stunted as well. So government and industry have to own up to that reality now. I don't believe that the plan to expand VAT exemption is going to help. We don't need to go wider. We need to go deeper. We need to deeply discount a limited basket of high protein foods, and that requires both government to come in with a subsidy and industry to waive their profits on it. So that's the first thing. And then, as you say, we've got to find ways to ensure that children who are in some sort of service also get that meal. Children in school get a school meal, but children in early childhood development centers don't. So we want to see the extension of that school feeding program down into early childhood development as well. And then from an early learning perspective, we've got to see, and government really needs to firstly extend the ECD subsidy, the amount of money that's given per child in ECD centers at the moment. That needs to be extended to other forms of early childhood development program. Not every child is in a formal center. A lot of them are in childminder situations or in informal centers, and we believe that that subsidy must be extended, but it also needs to be increased. Its value has diminished over the last 10 years. It hasn't really kept up with inflation, and so there needs to be a doubling of that subsidy. So these are some of the critical areas where government needs to intervene fast.
Now let's talk a little bit more, about early childhood development and those learning facilities. What are some of the detrimental effects on children who aren't able to access or be part of any kind of early childhood development learning? So anything before, your nursery and preschool years. What are some of the detrimental effects that you have noticed on children who don't actually have that access?
Well, we know that a combination of love and play and socialization with other children is very, very important in brain formation, very, very important in language development of children. And so children who miss out of that early learning experience, particularly when they've come from difficult homes where maybe their mothers are going looking for work, don't have enough time to stimulate and enrich their children's development in ways that wealthier parents do. In those cases, early learning programs are so important just to create an environment of structured play, to be able to introduce children to books and stories, allow children to play with other children, to develop the skills of socialization and to develop their brains at the same time. So children who miss out on that tend to fall behind. They're not ready for school. They don't have the basic conceptual understanding of numeracy or of literacy. So they're not ready to read. They're not ready to do maths by the time they get to school. And as a result, they enter school at disadvantage. And what we've seen is that they progressively fall behind. They fall behind so that by the time they are in grade 4 or grade 5, they're already failing. And they fail a few times, and then they push through. They get to grade 10 when they're age 19 or 20, and that's when they're pushed out of school. And they contribute to the 50% of our young people who are unemployed. So it's this cycle that you spoke about earlier that really starts from the sort of deprivation that children experience in their early life.
Absolutely fair to say that early childhood development facilities are incredibly important in terms of ensuring, the academic futures of our young children in South Africa and ensuring that they're able to have those equal opportunities to be able to break that cycle. But David, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for, sharing with us this evening. I think I would like to, before you go, really commend you and your team as well as the other organizations who are driving this narrative forward. It's really important that we highlight these key issues that are affecting children in South Africa. So I really commend you on your efforts, and we wish you the best, because we are absolutely all in support of providing a better future for our children in South Africa.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate the time that you've taken to unpack the issues and to talk with me.
Thank you very much, David. Viewers at home, that was David Harrison, the CEO of DG Murray Trust. Now, he is part of just one of the organizations that are pushing the GNU forward in terms of ensuring that we are investing in the children of South Africa and that we are doing better to bring down the childhood mortality and childhood poverty rate. We spoke about, some of the various issues that South African children are faced with and the level of inequality that still exists in our society today in a 2024 context.